It is my honor to introduce someone who is a very dear friend, someone who is a freedom fighter of the highest order, someone who is at the tip of the spear when it comes to issues related to the weather and climate. He is a multifaceted individual. He has a new book out called Weaponization of the Weather. And it is truly an outstanding book. I believe actually Sean Hannity wrote the introduction. I was honored that he included a comment I made about the book on the back cover. He takes on the deep state, the syndicate, as it relates to just the facts. Here are the facts. Here are the facts. Here's the data. Here is the evidence. You decide for yourself. This is what life should be all about. Unfortunately, Joe Bastardi gets a lot of grief for telling the truth. Joe is a graduate of the great Penn State University. He obtained a degree in meteorology. He is the chief forecaster at the best weather site on the planet, weatherbell.com, weatherbell.com. I encourage you to be a subscriber on that site. Joe is well known for his accuracy in forecasting weather patterns, and Joe has also been an outspoken expert, underline the word expert, on climate change. It's my honor to welcome back my friend, Joe Bastardi. Joe, welcome back to Operation Freedom.
Well, thank you for having me over here. Before I get to what we usually talk about, folks, this is the worst winter weather event, the worst 5 days of winter weather beginning now in Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, eastern Oklahoma, and maybe even up into Tennessee and Kentucky. I'm talking relative to what has ever been observed. The next 5 days are just going to be outrageous. I worked the big freezes in Texas in 83 and 89, and to give credit to the Texas state government, they became very proactive Friday night. I've been miffed all week because I felt that the bread and circuses that we were seeing in D.C. were distracting from what is the winter equivalent, as far as the extremity goes for this area, of a Category 5 hurricane. The implications to the economy and the lives of people in these areas, from busting pipes, power outages where snow is on the ground and you can't clean it off and you can't go help people, the ecological disaster in the Texas coastal water when you get these kind of freezes, the citrus disaster all the way into the lower Rio Grande Valley like this. And here's the other thing. The wind turbines are down. And the reason they're down is they're not winterized. So that's 15 to 20% of the grid with 10 to 20 times the normal amount of demand. And already Texas is warning people we could have blackouts here because of the lack of power. Not to mention the freezing rain that's going to take down trees and power lines. And not only that, there's not only just one storm, there's two storms. And so I was actually trying to reach out to some people to try to say, could I please talk to someone that has President Biden's ear? Because I was tweeting it, trying my best to get some attention about it, because what should have been going on this week is that the federal government, in my opinion, should have been taking a proactive stance as they do with hurricanes. Whenever the big hurricanes were coming, they get stuff into position first, right? This is totally ignored. Totally ignored. And the reason, just like when COVID was coming on, it may have been ignored, is because we were conducting a circus, all right? You could have at least put the circus on delay for a few days to focus on the disaster that is going to be occurring. The amount of damage to the economies of those states, there are 40 million people that live in those states. And the toll of the next 5 days on human life, the threat of people isolated. You know, when you get 2-3 inches of snow and sleet on the roads and you can't clear it off. See, this isn't your normal Texas event. Oh, it snows, the next day it goes. This is going to stick around. And a second storm is coming Wednesday into Thursday. And that's going to be a worse ice storm in the very areas that are going to get hit hardest with the snow. believe it or not, the heaviest snow is going to fall from Austin to Shreveport with this, where they'll have 6 to 10 inches of snow late tonight and tomorrow in there. And then an ice storm is going to hit there later in the week. And by the way, you're going to have 1 to 2 feet of snow within the next 10 days with 2 or 3 storms up there in Ann Arbor. The Ohio Valley, the Midwest, Kentucky is going to get shut down. All right? Now, we can handle it in the Midwest in that we know how to plow snow. But imagine the kind of weather if there's a foot, even 5 inches of snow on the ground, and if I have a great affection for the state of Texas because I grew up down there, and I love driving the back roads. But not every farm or ranch is South Fork out there, folks. You're driving out there and you see people that they live very modestly and they love their lives and they're good people. But if they get cut off and there's no power, there's going to be a real problem. All right. So we could have been getting snow fighting equipment down there, shipping salt down into there. And I do know in talking with some people that are higher up that the state of Texas really started trying to take action. But they have to take action on their own as opposed to when something else is coming. You know what's funny? You remember the hullabaloo about Dorian, where President Trump included Alabama in it? Which
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he should not have doubled down because he was wrong about it. But the fact of the matter is, he was looking at stuff 4 or 5 days away, right? And when you start looking, Shreveport is going to have between a foot and 18 inches of snow this week, all right? What are you going to do? There's an ice storm coming for New Orleans. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with Little Rock? What are you going to do with Oklahoma City? It's 4 degrees above zero in Oklahoma City right now, and the wind chill is 10 to 15 below. So, I look at this stuff, and I'm like, I mean, obviously I'm a small government guy, but I do believe that the government should supply a safety net. And they should have been paying more attention to this. And what gets me is, listen, Dave, I drop my climate sword when it comes to life and the hardship on people because I am well aware of what nature can do. And we got a lot of people that were involved this week. You just mark my words, by Wednesday, if something real bad has happened, you're going to hear the usual suspects that were clamoring for the ex-president's head. They're going to come out and start saying this is climate change. We told you this was going to happen, blah, 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 right? And the level, I'm mad at the media too. They just kept, I was talking to people, I go, listen, everybody's saying the same thing. Everybody's on the impeachment 24/7. Why don't you I wanted to get on and say, blah, 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 Wednesday. And if it happens, then you can go sell that to advertisers and say, look, we called this weather event while everyone else was just paying attention over there. 5 minutes. And to his credit, Sean Hannity let me get on Friday because he has a lot on his plate, obviously, with all the impeachment stuff. He let me get on for 5 minutes, and we got the message out. But this is the stuff that's going on today. It drives me nuts. It's all show. And, of course, this weather event is just mind-boggling. I put 4 days ago on Twitter, I put the maps of 1899 on. 1899 is the benchmark weather event in Texas. We had a high of 13 and a low of -9 in Dallas. All right? That's how bad that was. And the computer model was forecasting the weather map from 1899. We have the surface map, right? And I'm like, how? Guess what? 1899 is coming. Get ready, right? And there weren't 40 million people living in that area in 1899. So this is a extremely serious situation. Listen, it's serious. It's serious. Missouri. It's going to be serious in Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Southern Michigan. But you know something? We know how to handle this stuff, right? But they don't know how to handle it down there. And the other thing is our pipes. You ever have a pipe burst in your house? You know what that's like? These pipes are all put in just an inch or two underground, right? Well, you're at 15 degrees for 3 days. Guess what's going to happen to the pipes, right? So it's a dreadful situation, and about as bad a winter situation. I put a box bounded by Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Houston, Memphis, and then back to Oklahoma City, chances are people who have lived in that area all their life, this will be the worst 5 days of winter that they've ever experienced in their life. And that's what I say as far as the extreme, the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane as far as the extreme. You know, when the damage will be different. The damage won't be a bulldozer coming in off the Gulf of Mexico and flattening trees and power lines. But a lot of trees and power lines are going to go down in East Texas, for instance. And you know what I love about Texas? If you ever go down there, like I'm in the woodlands, if you're driving through the woodlands, you can't even see where a house or a store is. Oh, we're going to keep the trees up. And these are these skinny little pine trees. And those Texas pines are supposed to go down every 50, 60 years from hurricanes. That's why they're so skinny, right? But we're going to maintain the pines. Well, guess what happens to those pine trees when you get a hurricane like Ike or you get an ice storm like this? They come down. And if there are houses underneath them, those pine trees fall on houses and cause a lot of damage and a lot of problems. So it's just you know, I've been waiting to get on because I've sort of been all dressed up with no place to go around here the past couple of days.
So, folks, we're speaking with the great Joe Bastardi from weatherbell.com. So, Joe, our second largest listening audience on the internet, our number one listening audience is in California. Second largest listening audience is in the great state of Texas. What recommendations are you currently making for all those folks in Texas? Because some of this is obviously beyond their control because you don't have the government doing the front end stuff they should be doing and the like.
Well, first of all, Governor Abbott is really out in front, the best he can get out in front. He declared the state of emergency. You know, I went into one of the newspapers, said, we've had ice storms before. You know, not like this, right? I mean, this is what drives me nuts about journalists and media today. They do not go and research. They don't. How is it that you don't think, okay, we had an ice storm like this in 1983, right? How many people were living in Austin, Texas in 1983 compared to today? The demand, you see what I'm saying? The multiples
yes.
As far as that. I never make recommendations to anyone. I just tell them what I think is going to happen, and then they're going to have to figure out what they want to do. I think that this is going to be a multi-billion-dollar hit to the Texas economy. Or, you know, when you total everything up over 5 days and the amount of work time lost, and I just hope that there's no big loss of life from people freezing to death. Think about the immigration situation. Oh. It's going to 20 degrees in Laredo and McAllen, and there are people there that are really, they're not sheltered very well. What the heck is going on? You know, I'll tell you what, that's mind-boggling to me. Okay, and you can see my old Joe Bastardi, grew up in the 70s liberal side coming out. But this is what they're supposed to do. Now, I will tell you this. I know for a fact that Governor Abbott is aware of all this. I know that for a fact. He's even aware of what happened in 1983, all right, to the Texas marine life was devastated in the 83 outbreak. So you should just you just got to heed stuff, and I hope people have blankets. I hope they're stocked up. I wish I was praying that I get a opportunity. You know, I was scheduled to be on TV in certain places Tuesday, Wednesday, because I email people. I email them way in advance to say, you got to get ready for this and look at this. And I'll tell you what is really weird. No one cares until it happens. And I get on the phone with people, and I say, once it's happening, it doesn't matter that I'm on. Everybody's watching Jim Cantori on the Weather Channel. Once it's happening, that's not what I do.
It's too late.
That's you know, there's nothing I can tell people anymore. I mean, by now it's it's like my wrestling coach at Penn State. He used to say, "Don't let your opponent know how strong you are until it's too late." If you're not ready for it, you just got to hope that you hunker down the right way. By the way, we interrupt this program to bring you a special report. Penn State has defeated Michigan in wrestling. Okay, now back to the regular show.
Well, that's the same old. Joe, you guys have been doing that for a freaking decade.
No, but Michigan was ranked number 2 going into this. Michigan,
not now.
Well, they're going to be right up there. We got to get back to what we usually talk about here. Not
Joe,
wrestling.
earlier in this interview, you mentioned you tried to do everything in your power to contact I can't say Joe Biden and his and staff about what was going on. Did you ever get a response from them?
No, I never could get to anyone, but I was trying to get attention.
Well, he's too busy playing video games. Did you see him and Camp David playing video games yesterday?
Listen, that's not the president's fault. It's the people that should be in his ear watching his back in any given situation. You know this situation with our former president, that people weren't watching his back. And politically, it would have been a brilliant move. Could you imagine if on Wednesday, President Biden, and they wanted to turn the state of Texas blue, had come out and said, we're very concerned about this. We're going to get ready before to make sure Texas, blah, 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 blah. Where was Beto O'Rourke or any of these guys? Are they looking at this stuff? So, the president, no matter what you think, they have a lot to do, but someone should have gotten in his ear, unless, of course, they want to play the climate blame game when it's done. I don't know.
Joe, the cynic tells me that's exactly what they're going to do. The more loss of life, the more damage, the more people without power, the more people without food and water. They're going to say, oh, this is all climate change. Do you see the ramifications of climate change? They're going to blame it all on climate change when the real issue here is how they proactively blew it.
Well, yeah, that's why it's it's kind of weird that we have the people that come into power that have, and I should write that book. Glad I listened. Sean Hannity told me to write the book. I'm not just dropping Sean's name. He's a pretty good guy. I think he's a real good guy. But he said, "You got to write this book. You got to write this book." It's a great chapter, the weaponization of weather. It was in my other book too, and it's just sitting there now. I'll tell you what, I wish people would buy it, not only because, I wrote a book and all that stuff, but it describes perfectly, including with COVID, what was going to happen. And I just, so it gets frustrated with that. I said, people say, well, what do you think of this? I go, I don't have anything else to say. Go read the book. That's all there's to it. But it's going to be interesting to see if this thing pans out as bad as it has the potential by next Wednesday and Thursday across the country, because they will come out of the woodwork. It could snow cheese in New York City, and they'd blame it on climate change, or whatever they blame it on over there. I don't even know anymore what goes on around New York. So it's a crazy situation, and I'll tell you what really gets to me. I can't believe this little weather geek, this little 3-year-old that loved the weather. I got to tell you something, David. I have to knock it off. You know how much I'm sleeping? I'm sleeping 4 1.5-hour naps in 24 hours. You know why? Because I'm so obsessed with the weather. And I made a vow, and it actually lasted up until about 10 days ago, where I was like, look, God's in control of the weather. Joe, you're not. You can't stay up and look at every single map, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And guess what's happened over the last 10 days, because these patterns rev me up. Now, I'm trying to figure out what John Kerry's been doing over the last 10 days as far as looking at this situation that is leading to this extremity that when I don't mean to pick on just John Kerry, but someone from that side is going to come out. And we're going to see, now that the impeachment is over, if this thing pans out, the severity of the weather across the Deep South and across much of the United States over the next 5 to 7 days pans out, then it's the climate blame game again and the weaponization of the weather. And hopefully I could, say, hey, look at that book right there. It predicted that right there. I did a better prediction with the book than I do with the actual weather.
Joe, I'd like to thank you for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. Now, the name of the book is called The Weaponization of Weather. It is available on Amazon. It is a phenomenal read. I encourage every one of our listeners to go out, get the book, and then give it to your friends and family